What movie plot hole still bothers you to this day? Farm Poet said. Just watch the Bigfoot cartoon movie on Netflix. The kid says he inherited the ability to run very fast and talk to animals due to being Bigfoot's son. However, Bigfoot was originally a human scientist that was changed into Bigfoot after a science experiment went wrong. His kid was already born when this happened, so no way did he inherit powers. Bothered me more than it should for a kid's movie. Axios14 said. Ross Algal standing next to a microwave emitter, explaining it turns the water in pipes 100 feet away into steam, but apparently isn't strong enough to turn the water in his body into steam when he's standing 10 inches away. Noidshield said. The stock exchange plot in the third one was stupid as hell too. Like it's fine while you're watching and then you are thinking about the movie later and just go, what? 'Cause sure, literally anyone is going to believe that the richest guy in the city just happened to make a series of trades so bad he's now completely destitute on the same day there was a massive attack on the stock exchange. Lemus Blaine said. See also, TDK, examining a bullet hole and being able to pull a fingerprint off of the fragments of bullet used to create the hole. But in order to reverse engineer the fragmentation pattern, he test-fired a bunch of random bullets from a minigun that can somehow produce the same results as a handgun or rifle, or both at the same time. And if that's not silly enough, a fingerprint wouldn't be on the bullet. When you insert a round into a magazine, you press down on the casing, not the bullet itself. And if that still isn't silly enough, the Joker planned for the possibility, and so left a distraction at the address where the magic fingerprint would lead. Don't get me wrong, I love the movie as a whole, but that little segment was bonkers. Anublo said. You're telling me that essentially the smartest person in the world, that took a $50K loan from some mafia, and then turned that into millions, in like a few days through some crazy investing scheme, was unable to have the foresight to pay back the loan shark on time. It was explained in the movie, he was just too focused on making money, and he forgot. Yeah, okay. The dude remembering a random book he glanced at 20 years ago, simply forgot to pay a loan he took out a few weeks ago. Funky Zero Ness said. This always bothered me too, but my headcanon around that is the limitless drug is explicitly shown to increase risk-seeking behavior. So he wasn't just focused on making money, but on doing it in the most high-risk, dangerous way possible. Talk your way into a safe, low-risk loan? Nope. Borrow money from a violent loan shark? Hell yeah. Pay the loan shark back once you make your nut in the market? Stiff the shark and see if you can get away with murder? Fuck yeah, YOLO bitches. So even if he didn't intend to, he may have inadvertently been doing things unnecessarily dangerously for the thrill of the challenge. Frustrated Polarber said. In signs the aliens are shown to be allergic to water and that it burns them badly. Doesn't seem to stop them running around a central dew-covered cornfield in the middle of the night for the first half of the film though. Jedi Lion 17 said. Not to mention the fact they have interplanetary travel but don't think to first analyze the chemical molecular content of Earth and realize it is made up of 70% of a substance harmful to them before landing. Not Harv anyway said. You're thinking like a human. That's what I was told when I started pointing things like that out. Dumbest aliens ever. We have mastered interstellar travel. We can now commit digressions on other intelligent life. Let's do it naked and with no weapons other than our poison dew claws. Sounds good. First stop, that planet 2/3 covered by a substance we can't tolerate. Esilio said. They spent all of Rogue One setting up this explanation that the Death Star is powered by kyber crystals which are rare and difficult to find. The Empire mines an entire planet for years to get enough kyber crystals to just begin the project. They spent all of the OT explaining how long it takes to build and rebuild the Death Star. Then they spent all of TFA explaining how Starkiller Base used a new technology that relied on harnessing the power of an adjacent star instead of kyber crystals specifically because kyber crystals were so rare and difficult to extract anymore they were basically unattainable. They spent all of TLJ and Solo explaining that huge ships take so long to build. Then, inexplicably, the same writer that was involved with TFA writes a story where Palpatine gets enough kyber crystals, workers, and supplies to a secret location and somehow goes unnoticed for years, even by Kylo who visits the planet, to power 1,000 Death Star tech ships? Oh yeah, And these ships? Apparently none of them can navigate without a beacon. Ugh. Just ugh. A teenager could have fleshed out a more coherent idea than that. Chris Mama once said. Not only that, but the entire point of The Last Jedi was that the galaxy was too exhausted by generations of constant warfare, that nobody was willing to fight anymore and that our small cast of heroes was the only light left. Then in Episode 9 I guess the whole galaxy spontaneously changed its mind because Lando is such a smooth talker? Judge Hodor MD said. He somehow managed to get the manpower and resources needed to build the biggest fleet the galaxy has ever seen without creating any kind of trail or huge discrepancy of the missing resources. No space wizard from any faction ever chanced to cross a weak-willed cargo pilot or anything. The MacGuffin is the only way to find a place that had to have received about a planet's weight worth of the metal. Eglor said. Needed to build the biggest fleet the galaxy has ever seen. I agree with everything you're saying except this bit. If I remember correctly, at its height the Imperial Navy had thousands of Star Destroyers deployed throughout the galaxy. We only see a subset of them during the big movie battles like the end of ROTJ because Palpatine only committed the number of forces he felt were adequate to crush the relatively small fleet the Rebel Alliance sent to destroy the Death Star II. Edit. Okay, I decided to see if I could find some solid numbers so I'm not just talking out of my ass and came across this, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/galactic_empire_left_star_wars. At its peak, the Imperial Navy fields millions of warships, including an estimated 25,000 Star Destroyers, fulfilling the Emperor's will throughout the galaxy. And this. At the peak of the Empire, over 25,000 Imperial Star Destroyers were in existence. So while I can't speak intelligently about the number of ships that appear in Palpatine's TLJ fleet since I have no interest in watching the movie, I can say that 25,000 ships is the number it has to surpass in order to be the largest fleet the galaxy has ever known. Of course if you factor in the expanded universe, the US Hanvong easily had more than 25,000 capital-sized vessels in their invasion force. Gecko23 said. Plus they were buried on Sith World. Why? 2/3 of the movie exists only to beat home the point that no one has any idea how to get there. Nobody would notice orbiting construction. How did the materials get there? Again, over and over it's pointed out that there only exist a handful of these wayfinders, and you can't find it without one. And finally, how did the entire Rebel fleet come from literally everywhere, with the same travel time no matter where they started, and then just show up at the Uber secret, behind a lightning nebulous Sith paradise? It just gets dumber the more you look at it. Olive Green said. In Polar Express, the kid who almost misses the train never gets gifts from Santa for Christmas presumably because his parents can't afford presents, meaning either A, Santa isn't real or B, Santa hates poor people. But at the end of the movie the main kid gets the bill from Santa directly, so canonically Santa said fuck that kid in particular, I guess. This has haunted me for decades. Lorena Bobbitt said. Also, laws and morals aren't the only reasons you don't kill people. If you kill somebody, their friends and family are going to be highly motivated to kill you the next year. It's also pretty dangerous try and kill people, you're likely to get killed or injured yourself. It's just a goofy horror movie, but I was distracted by trying to imagine how the film's setting could actually work. Silly Power said. Why wait a year to exact revenge? We're expected to accept the premise that come dawn all that animosity and hatred stops and we're all back to being happy neighbors. Howdy neighbor. It sure was fun raping and killing your wife last night, and stealing your 100 inches TV. But gosh darn, I only got it as far as my garage. Could you come over later and help me move it my living room? Sure thing buddy. That's what neighbors are for. Great, thanks. I'll get some beer and we can watch the game afterwards. And I can tell you how much your wife screamed when I killed her. Not as much as your wife will next year. Ha ha. Coldly Ketharoki said. You're not wrong. Also, even though murder is legal for one day, it's hard to believe most people would commit it so easily just because their neighbors made more money than them. And though it's legal one day, the next day you still have to interact with your neighbors, co-workers, etc. that you tried to kill or did kill their family, friends. If someone in my town killed my best friend on the verge, I wouldn't care that purge had ended. I'd get revenge and find a way to get away with it. Most would. SyncTube said. Just another inconsistent application of the Prime Directive. The worst part of Trek Emo. The idea is that they allow less advanced cultures to advance without interference, but they still constantly send down disguised researchers to study them in person. When a researcher is inevitably discovered, they're suddenly okay with massive amounts of interference to extract them, in some cases setting back a culture that was ready to discard its superstitions by centuries when they pretend to be magical men here to bring their friend home. And then in other cases they adhere to the Prime Directive even though doing so literally pushes the culture in question to extinction. In one episode they find a planet that's about to lose its entire atmosphere. I don't remember why, but it's deemed too primitive to contact, semi-industrial, so they just sit back and watch millions of people suffocate with scientific detachment. Did they really think that was better, on any moral or ethical basis, than contaminating their culture by giving them an oxygen generator or something? In the end, one crew member defies orders by transporting the people of a local village into the holodeck, where he simulates local conditions until they can be transplanted to a similar planet without them even knowing they left home. And it still takes hours of debate before the captain agrees that fine, we'll take them somewhere they can survive instead of dumping them back on the planet that now has no air for them to breathe. Eltman86 said. We've seen that the hypnosis is more of a suggestion than full mind control. When Jafar was trying to pressure the Sultan into pushing Jasmine to marry him, we've seen the Sultan kinda break out of the hypnosis because of his concern for her. Unfortunately, Jafar almost succeeds before Aladdin's big parade pulls everyone's attention outside. So for what I understand, the person must be open to the idea so that the hypnosis can push them to acting upon it. Also a bit of the weak-willed mind that the Sultan had that made it easier for Jafar to push his ideas in. Willis 644 said. In Ant-Man, they claim that mass stays the same, and only the distance between atoms changes, yet he is quite obviously much lighter when smaller. And he wouldn't be able to throw punches when that small, he wouldn't have enough leverage to do so, his muscles would be too small, and even if he could exert enough force to throw them back like with a normal punch, his tiny little hands would just punch through their flesh like stabbing someone with a pencil. CTTC Jim said Ant-Man is super inconsistent about that. He cracks the bathroom tile, which is accurate for a 180-200 pound weight on an ant-sized impact. But later he runs on a person's gun as they are holding it. He rides on ants that should be crushed. He punches people while tiny and doesn't blow a hole through them. In later movies he gets huge and is heavier and stronger. Try not to think about it. Alabaster Gorilla said. Marty's family at the end of Back to the Future, there's no way they would be living in the exact same house if his father turned into a totally different, more successful person. And would you hire the guy who tried to rape your wife in HS and that you punched out wax your cars? Honestly. Bellingham Bongo said. Didn't they also do that in Season 1 in downtown Atlanta to walk through the streets? I missed that show. I dropped off around Season 4 or 5 I think when Daryl saved the blonde young girl in the hospital. Or when Rick bit at the guy's throat off on the side of the road. I can't remember. I haven't ventured to look up if it's any good anymore, but I love seeing Daryl in commercial kicking ass. I wish I was that cool and Norman Reedus is awesome. The Intrepid said. I never objected to Palpatine being brought back, but how they did it was so lazy. There should have been some subtle hints in the first movie. The second should have ended with his return and him dealing a huge blow to the heroes who start to doubt themselves and turn on one another as a result. And the third should have seen the heroes just barely snatch victory from the jaws of defeat after coming back together and ending Palpatine once and for all. Instead, Palpatine was just there, chilling in his spooky man cave at the start of Episode 9 despite the lack of even a mention in prior movies, with the best explanation for his presence summed up in the word somehow. No doubt the comics and TV shows will fill in the gaps as they did with the prequels, but still, it's a shame. V-Villain said. This doesn't bother me so much. He saw her super fancied up in a baller-ass dress, makeup, hair cleaned and styled, with the composure and confidence of a princess. I'm sure you've seen comparison pictures of models or actors between their done-up, for camera appearance and just everyday, no makeup, normal clothes. They look pretty different. Now on top of that add in that she probably pretty filthy most of time, wearing rags, etc. And the prince is expecting a, well, princess. Someone royal, not a scrub maid. I really don't think it's unreasonable that he wouldn't recognize her. And she clearly wouldn't have wanted to talk to him about anything that would reveal she wasn't royalty, so she probably didn't say much about herself. Lynch Deadmanx said. Basically everything in A Quiet Place. Why not live by the waterfall? Why not use strategically placed sound makers so the alien bugs have to run far away? Why leave a nail in the stairs board? Why not toss a rock to make a sound instead of screaming to save your kids? Also, how did no one think of high-frequency sound? Also, you were telling the military and all the world's governments couldn't figure it out? Still a great movie though. Themela Stedslaver said. Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet. Jesus H. Christ, there's an endless list on that last season, but that one stuck with me. That one line is a good encapsulation of what was wrong with the last 2 seasons. They wrote it like an overworked DM as opposed to writers getting paid millions of dollars because millions of people watch the show. No, it makes zero sense for her to just forget about the Iron Fleet, yet that is potatoes compared to fucking urine 360 no-scoping a dragon with no practice. That would be the equivalent of an amateur kid who never held a baseball beating the record set by people in the major leagues. Ridiculous. Optimistic Nihilist 5 said. In Ocean's 8, when Sarah Paulson pulls out the necklace from the water, it is assumed that it might have dropped when Anne Hathaway was running towards the bathroom. They literally showed that the necklace cannot be opened without that magnet thingy, and not even her bodyguards questioned that, who were dumb math though. SimCity Crackhouse said. Mean Girls, how and why did Janice never receive any of the blame for what went down at North Shore? Caddy wound up with all the hate, and while Caddy does resolve to stop talking about people behind their backs, the whole damn infiltrate and destroy the plastics thing was Janice's idea. She confesses to it at the goddamn workshop they hold in the gymnasium, showing no remorse, and everyone cheers for her, but Caddy gets shunned? Because she was friends with the girls who wrote the burn book? It just seems so backwards. Plus, Karen was one of the nicest girls in the movie, and Damien and Janice rip on her for being so dumb. But it's okay when they do it. Just seems like they get away with shit they condemn others for, because they're the outcasts in school. Side note, I love this movie to pieces, but it does bother me that Janice is portrayed as being in the right the whole time. Sailor Spoon 11 said. I also love Mean Girls, it's one of my favorites. The thing is though, Janice is a mean girl. She's every bit as bad as Regina, the only difference between them is that Regina has all the power. That's why Janice wants to take her down. So of course she shit-talks Karen. Karen is nice by plastic standards, but she still participates in the burn book. She's a mean girl, too. I think Janice gets off easier than Caddy because for one thing Regina let everyone believe that Caddy wrote the burn book. For another thing, Janice used her outcast status to make herself out to be a victim and a hero. Everyone knows that plastics have all the power, that Regina has personally victimized pretty much every girl in school. They see Janice as someone who punched up and tried to take down an evil monarch, so of course they cheer her on.